Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I really hope you're all doing okay and having a great day and an amazing week. My name is Effy and today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm not actually putting any makeup on my face. This makeup is for Instagram, realistically, and TikTok. But I will leave everything that's on my face listed in the description box in case you are interested. But today we are doing a good old tag. I don't think I've ever done a tag video before and they're not really that much of a thing anymore. But I was watching one of Smoky Glow's old videos. I love Smoky Glow so much. But I was watching one of her old videos and she did this, so all credit to her. I can't remember who started this tag. But if you've never heard of a tag, it's essentially a bunch of set questions that you go through and answer, and essentially somebody's meant to tag you in it, but they're not a thing anymore, so I'm just going to answer the questions anyway. And this is the palette tag, so it's a bunch of questions about palettes. I have my answers in front of me and we will go through each one and just chat about them. So it's a bit more of a chatty video, but hopefully that's good with you. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. I put up 2 videos a week and it's always makeup content, so if that sounds like your type of thing, then this is the place for you. I do normally put makeup on my face. I don't normally just sit and chat, but I do want to do a few more sit and chat videos because I enjoy watching them and they're a little bit easier to film than putting my face through so many different looks in the space of like a weekend. So I'm going to try and do a few more chatty videos. Let me know what you think of this one. If you have any other questions about palettes or these palettes or anything, or just let me know your answers to these questions down in the comment section. I do reply to pretty much all of my comments. But other than that, let's get on with the video. So I have the questions and my notes in front of me, so if you see me looking down, that is what I'm looking at. First question is my newest palette. Now this is a bit difficult because of how I film my content. I'm filming this on December 20th. No, I'm not. I'm filming it on December 19th. So I may have tested more palettes on my channel by the time this goes live, but as of right now, I haven't. Now technically the last video that went up that I was testing a palette, it was the Beauty Bay Love Notes, but I bought that before I bought these palettes. And they are the Cosmic Brushes, Serenity palette and the Royal Roses that I can bother to get down. But these are the most recent palettes I've bought. I have actually bought another palette, but it's on the way, so it's not here yet. So this is the Serenity palette. I really was so impressed by both this and the Royal Rose palette. I do slightly prefer the Serenity just because I prefer the colour scheme, but the Royal Roses performs beautifully. They have some beautiful shimmers in them. Cosmic Brushes is a brand that I am so interested in. They sell out of their palettes so quickly, but I am going to look this year into getting some of their other palettes and testing those because I do really like them, and they're not that expensive for an indie brand. They're not that expensive. They are UK based, and as you know, we all love supporting indie brands. So yeah, I'm very happy that I have these palettes and the Royal Rose one, which is up on my top shelf. But yes, this is my newest palette technically. Now for my oldest palette, so the other end of the spectrum, and of course, it is the SOF X Revolution original palette. I obviously had eyeshadow palettes before this, but this is the only one I still have in my collection. So this is technically the oldest palette I own. I love this palette. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pans in it. I do love it. I don't use it as much as I would like to. I would love to use it more, but I just reach for other things. It still performs really well. I've probably had this for about like 7 or 8 years at this point. It's a very long time. But it still works, and it still works really nicely. The formula is a bit dated now. You can get so many better formulas, but I do love it. And this palette and SOF in general is the reason I fell in love with makeup and started doing YouTube. So it's just nice to still have this palette. Next up is my most expensive palette. The Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. I think this palette is like £56, £60, somewhere around there. I got it in the Glossy Box Advent Calendar a few years ago, and honestly I do really like it. Would I purchase it? I don't know, because actually I'm really tempted to buy, I think, is it the Pretty Grunge palette that she came out with at the end of last year? I'm pretty tempted to buy that as like a treat for myself, because this palette was really good and I really like that colour scheme. So I would pay this again, maybe not for this palette because the colour scheme in this palette isn't perfect for me, but the Pretty Grunge one I actually quite like. I do love the shimmers. The shimmers are phenomenal. The mattes work really well. It's a really good palette. It's just the most expensive one that I own. And the pan just fell out. Did you see that? Oh my god. That's never happened to me before. I've never had a pan fall out of a palette ever. I'm in shock. I'm in shock. I'll deal with that. Glad to see 50-60 pounds buys quality. I'm joking, it happens. It does happen. It's not Huda's fault. I've had that palette for a few years. I can re-glue it. It's not a big deal. Now again to the other end of the spectrum, and that is my cheapest palette. Now, bit of a size difference. This is the ELF Bitesized palette in the shade Berry Bad. It is tiny. I think these are like £3 or £4. Again, I probably have had slightly cheaper palettes before, and you can probably get cheaper palettes than this from like MUA or Collection, potentially, I'm not sure. But this is actually really good. It's a really good quality as well. The shimmers aren't my favourite, but that doesn't bother me. The mattes work really nice. The shimmers do a good enough job. Yeah, really nice, cute palette. They do quite a few different colourways of this as well. I do have another one, but that's technically coming under a different question. So yeah, super cute. £4 I think, maybe £3 or £5, but either way, incredibly inexpensive and super good quality. Now it's time for my everyday palette. If you watched my favourites video at the end of last year, you will recognise this palette. This is the Wet n Wild Coffee Cat palette. It smells like coffee, which I love. I love coffee, I love cats, it's perfect. This is my everyday palette because for some reason I have started wearing browns. I'm wearing a pretty neutral look today. I used to be more of a pink person, but recently I've just been going towards my browns, and this is the palette that I wear most days. In fact, if I have to go away for work, which I sometimes do, this is the palette I take with me because it has everything I need. The shimmers, again, aren't my favourite, but they work well enough. In my opinion, these are better than the ELF ones, so they work really well. And the mattes are just amazing. I'm sorry I'm not swatching anything. I've only just thought about that at this point in the video, so I'm not going to start now, but I'll carry on. The mattes work really well. It has some neutral shades, some warmer shades. It doesn't really have many cool shades. I guess it does have a few cooler shades, but either way, I find that for a 16 pan palette, it's more versatile than a lot of other palettes I have, and I do really like it. Like, it has a few more like peachy, reddish shades. It's got some browns, some caramels, some neutrals. It has everything I need. It's a really good palette and super inexpensive. Wet n Wild is actually really good quality as well, I find. Next up we have most colourful palette. I have so many rainbow palettes, so I had to pick one. I obviously have the Beauty Bay Bright Mattes, the Bright 2.0 from Beauty Bay, other rainbow palettes, but I actually picked this one. This is the Makeup Obsession X Tiffany Kaleidoscopic Dreams palette. It looks like this. Now the reason I picked this one over the others is because I truly adore this palette. I love my Beauty Bay ones and I love all of my palettes, otherwise I wouldn't have them. But the Beauty Bay Mattes, I didn't pick that because it doesn't have any shimmers, and the Bright 2.0, I didn't pick that because I don't actually think it's as colourful as it looks. Like, it's very colourful, it's a rainbow palette, but I don't know, it just doesn't, for some reason in my brain, this is more colourful, I don't know. But yeah, this is really good quality. I can't remember how much this is, and I can't remember if you can actually still get it anymore, but it is so good. The shimmers, there are 8. The silver is the best silver eyeshadow I've ever tried, apart from the Kiko single eyeshadow that I'm in love with. The gold is also really good. The 4 in the corners are more like topper shades, which I used to hate, but now I love. As you can see in my eyeshadow, I've literally just got like the Lottie London Diamond Bounce highlighter on my lids because I was testing it to see if it was nice. And so I do tend to go for those more topper shades a lot more now, and I just love this palette. I'm not a fan of the layout. I prefer just more standard layouts in my palettes, but it does make sense. I like that it's like a circle and a gradient, and it's got a big black shade in the middle because I do use black eyeshadow a lot. It's not the worst layout of a palette I've ever seen, and for that reason I do really like it. So I know that I have bigger palettes with more shades, but for me this is what I would deem my most colourful shadow palette. Now for my smallest palette, and this is where the other e.l.f. bite-sized eyeshadow palette comes in. This is in the style Acai, and it's a blue version, and honestly I think I've used this once. I do like it, I just don't go for blue eyeshadow very often at all. Again, it's got two mattes, a shimmer, and then sort of like a satiny shade. It's not really a shimmer, I wouldn't say, but yeah, really good eyeshadow palette. I think I won this in a giveaway and that's why I didn't purchase it myself. But yeah, I don't have any palettes other than single eyeshadows. I don't have any palettes smaller than 4 shades, so this is actually really good. Other end of the spectrum, and we are looking at my biggest palette. It doesn't look that big. That is the size of a book. This is huge. This is the P. Louise Watch the Queen Conquer palette. It is a stunning palette. I love this palette. You've got like a pinky purple side, and then you've got like an orangey red side. However, you have a chessboard in the middle of it. Why? It doesn't come with chess pieces. I don't own chess pieces. I don't particularly play chess very often, although my boyfriend does keep trying to get me to play chess, but I don't really want to. This palette is huge. I have like textbooks from university. I have like textbooks from being an accountant that are thinner than this. If you look at it this way, it's actually not that unreasonable. It's just the width of it. I mean, I'm pretty sure this way it's like smaller than it's smaller than the Kaleidoscopic Dreams palette, but it's like 10 times the width of it. This is just unnecessarily bulky. I like that it has the 2 different sides, but you do not need all of this for these pans. Like, these pans are not that thick. It doesn't need to be that thick. It doesn't bother me tons because all my makeup pretty much stays up on that shelf. Don't get me wrong, I'm not taking this travelling, but I probably wouldn't anyway. So it doesn't bother me that much because it's not like I'm lugging it around all over the place. It would be nicer if it was thinner, and it wouldn't necessarily put me off buying other palettes from her, P. Louise that being. I don't know, it doesn't bother me massively, but if I get talking about it, I do complain. Next up is palette with the best memories. Now, I was going to use the SOF original palette, but actually I thought about it. I didn't want to use the same palette twice if I could help it, so I went for the SOF Extra Spice palette. Now, this palette is slightly less used, there's no pan in it. However, I feel like this palette marks the point where I started loving makeup. I bought the original SOF palette when I was watching SOF and I liked her videos, but I wasn't really into my makeup. I sort of just did it. Whereas I think when this palette came out, I rushed to Superdrug and bought it, and it was because I was at the point where I was really enjoying makeup and I love this, and this palette got me into watching people like Make Me Up Missa because she did a tutorial using this palette. I've done so many looks with this palette. It just does have some really good memories. I have other palettes that have good memories, and I have palettes that I've got rid of that I have good memories, ones that I like take to festivals and things like that. But I think this one holds a very special place along with the original SOF palette. They both mean a lot to me, so loads of really good memories with this. Now we're on to a palette that is worth the hype. Now, this was difficult because the palette I've chosen is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde, which I've already spoken about as my most expensive palette. And I didn't want to choose the same palette twice, but I literally looked through all my palettes and I'm like, I feel like none of them have been particularly hyped. And if they have, the next question is palette that's not worth the hype. And honestly, there's 2 palettes I could put in there. But I really struggled with this one because a lot of the palettes that I own haven't been particularly hyped up. But yeah, I think this was hyped back in the day when it came out. Oh, I also had I don't have it anymore, but the Modern Renaissance palette. I think that palette's also worth the hype, by ABH. But this one, I do think it's worth the hype. It's really nice. The formula is really nice. Like I said, it's pushed me to want to buy the Pretty Grunge palette. Yeah, I think it's worth the hype. Don't get me wrong, if you don't have I think it's £56 to buy this. If you don't have £56 to spend, do not buy it. If it's not your colour scheme, do not spend £56 on it. If you don't think you're going to use it, don't spend £56 on it. Like I said, it came in a glossy box advent calendar. I don't think I would have bought it otherwise, but I do enjoy it now that I have it. And now, palette that is not worth the hype. Now, like I said, there are two that could be in here. The one that I didn't put in here was the Stacey Marie Carnival 3 Love Tahiti palette. That palette was hyped up so much, mainly because I watch Make Me Up Miss It. However, I have that palette and I don't love it. I like it, I don't love it. I don't like the shimmers in it. However, there is one palette that is even more disappointing. And technically, this palette wasn't hyped up, but the series of palettes was hyped up. This is the Urban Decay Naked Cyber palette. I got this as a gift from a friend for my birthday. I've used it maybe a handful of times. I do like it. It's fine. I was expecting better because the Naked palettes had such a hype and a cult following. I wasn't really into makeup when they originally came out, but even when I got into makeup a lot later, it was still massively spoken about how good the quality of Urban Decay Naked palettes were. And this is just fine. Like, it's really not that good. I like it and I use it and I appreciate it because it was a gift from my friend. But on the whole, I don't think the Urban Decay Naked palettes are worth the hype. Now, I could be wrong. I know that Urban Decay did get bought out by a bigger company and that affected a lot of things. So the original palettes maybe were worth the hype, but I remember I desperately wanted the Naked Heat and the Naked Cherries palette. I got this and I no longer want them. I also wanted the Naked Honey, but like I said, I got this, I tried this, I wasn't massively impressed. I no longer want those other palettes, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, in my opinion, this just isn't worth the hype. Next up is my favourite palette by my favourite brand. My favourite brand for eyeshadow palettes is Beauty Bay. They just win at everything to do with eyeshadow. Obviously, they have palettes that I don't like. That's fine. They have colour schemes I don't like. They have formulas that I don't like. But on the whole, I think they are my favourite brand for eyeshadow palettes. And my favourite palette from them is the Wilderness palette. You can't get this anymore. But they do the Earthy palette, which is like a bigger version. And it's the same colour scheme-ish. I think it doesn't have the blues. But it's pretty much the same colour scheme. It's based off this palette. And that one is a permanent palette. And you can get that in a £9, £16 or £42. This is the palette that was based off. It was limited edition, it's green, I love green. I just always come back to this palette and always enjoy using it. I've had it for quite a few years now, I still enjoy using it, it's still absolutely stunning. I've hit pan on 1, 2, 3, 4 shades. All shimmers. The shimmers are pretty easy to hit pan on. The mattes not so much, but again the mattes are buttery, creamy, lovely, amazing. Beauty Bay, these £20 palettes I do think are slightly better quality than their like standard palettes. Like I have 6 of these, and I don't even want to count how many of their standard palettes I have, but I have a lot of the £42 palettes. I think particularly the shimmer formula is better in here. However, this shade here is like a flaky formula, I don't love that. And this one here is like a putty formula, I also don't love that. But I can get them to work, they do work amazingly. I reach for this palette all the time. This one also could have gone in my like best memories, because I've worn it so much for like so many different things in my life that it just has a lot of good memories. And then finally we have my most used palette. Now you have seen a lot of pans in my palettes. You saw some in the Wilderness, you saw some in the SOF palette. I think that might be it because I don't hit pan on a lot of things. But I think this palette is my most used. This is the BH Cosmetics Summer in Saint-Tropez palette. Again, this was a gift from a friend for my birthday a long time ago, but I have got 1, 2, 3, 4 pans in here, and there's a lot more that are very close, I just don't use it enough anymore. I've probably used this palette more than any other palette in my collection, with the exception of maybe the SOF palettes. I love this. The shimmer formula in here is one of the best shimmer formulas I have ever come across. I truly do love it. It's so glittery and sparkly and amazing, and it's what I want from a shimmer. The mattes are also really good. Some of them are a bit chalky, but again, this is a super old palette. So old, in fact, that the packaging has changed. You don't get this packaging anymore. It's in a different packaging. And obviously BH Cosmetics has been bought out by Makeup Revolution. A lot has changed since this palette came out. but I have used this so much over the years, and I do still reach for it occasionally because I do honestly just love it that much. So when I eventually retire this palette and get rid of it, I'm sure it will have a couple more pans in it. But there we go. I feel like I've been talking forever, but then at the same time it feels like this video is hopefully going to be pretty short. However, the only problem is I won't be able to edit much out because I've been talking the entire time. But let me know what you think of my choices. Let me know if you would have picked anything differently. Let me know some of your answers to these questions, or answer all of the questions. Main thing I want to know is, do you think the Mercury Retrograde is worth the hype? And also, what do I do about that pan? Do I just glue and done? Is that it? Is that how I fix that? Please let me know. But anyway, that is my palette tag. If you would like to do this video, if you have a YouTube channel and you want to do this video, or if you want to do it over on TikTok or whatever, go for it. I will leave the questions in the description box in case you are interested. And like I said, let me know your answers to them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. I put up 2 videos a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and they are always makeup related. So if that sounds like your type of thing, then this is the place for you. But other than that, I will let you go. Have a great day and an amazing week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!